Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribo, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Enam Kanvanda जय राधा श्याम सुंदर राधा श्याम सुंदर राधे। जय कृष्ण बलराम कृष्ण बलराम कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम। जय गौरानिताय 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 जय गौरानिताय।
आरो
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद। प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय हो प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद श्री प्रभुपाद की श्री गुरु चरण पद्मा केवल भक्ति सद्मा श्री गुरु चरण पद्मा केवल भक्ति सद्मा बंदो मोय सावधान मते बंदो मोय सावधान मते जहर प्रसादे भाय भवतो रिया जाय जहर प्रसादे भाय भवतो रिया कृष्ण प्राप्ति होय जहाँ होते गुरुमुख पद्मा वक्या चिते देखो रिया क्या चिते देखो रिया क्या आयरन को रिहो मने आशा श्री गुरु चरणे रति ऐसे उत्तम गति श्री गुरु चरणे रति ऐसे उत्तम गति जे प्रसादे सर्व आशा चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेम भक्ति जहा होइते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहा होइते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेद गाया जहा रचरितो श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आदम जनर बंधु लोके नाथ लोके रजीवन श्री लोकनाथ लोके रजीवन हा हा प्रभु करो दया देह में पद छाया एबेग श्री चक्रिभुवन एबेग श्री चक्रिभुवन शिल प्रभुपाद पतित पावन जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद श्री प्रभुपाद की नमः विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामीति नामिने सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे श्रीवासादि गौरा भक्त वृंद। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। चैतन्य कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Chari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Chari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sri Krishna Balarama ki jai, Sri Gornitai ki jai, Lalita Vishakadevi, Radha Sham Sundar ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Nitai Go Premanandi Hari Bo. Today we're reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila Chapter 1, titled The Spiritual Masters. We are reading from text 40 and 49, I believe.
It says 48, 49.
48 and 49.
You can read whatever you're supposed to read.
That's it. We start with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya or Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Oh, lost it. Is it up on the board to chant or no?
Yeah. What do you got on the board? 48, 49. No, yeah, slope is there. 48.
It's 48.
You want 49?
No, 48 is good. Let's do that. Naiva Payant Yapachitim Kavayas Tavesha. How does the Brahma Samhita meter, just remind me of that again? If you're chanting a Brahma Samhita verse, can you remind me of the meter for that? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Naiva Payantya Pachitim Kavayasta Vesha. Naivo Payant Yapavitim Kavayascha Vesha. Brahma Yushapi Kritam Rida Muda Smaranta Brahma Yushapi Kritam Ridha Muda Smaranta. Brahma Yushapi Kritam Ridha Muda Smaranta. Yo Ntar Bahis Tanu Britam Ashubam Vidunvan Yontar Bahishtanu Britam Ashubam Vidunvan. Yontar Bahishtanu Britam Ashubam Vidunvan. Acharya Chaitya Vapusha Swagatim Vyanakti Acharya Chaitya Vapusha Swagatim Vyanakti Acharya Chaitya Vapusha Swagatim Vyanakti Naivopayant Yapachitim Kavayastavesha Brahma Yupashpi Kritam Ridha Muda Smaranta Yontar Bahista Tuvritam Ashubam Vadunvan Acharyam Chaitya Vapusha Swagatim Yanakti Naivyo Prayanti Vapachim Kavayastavesha Brahma Syushapi Kritam Ridha Muda Smaranta Yonan Hishtanubritam Ashubam Vinunvan Acharya Chaitya Vapusha Swagatim Vyanakti Naivopayantya Pachitim Kavayashlavesha Brahma Yushapi Kritam Ridha Muda Smaranta Yontar Bahishtanubritam Ashubam Vidunvan Acharya Chaitya Vipusha Swagatim Vyanakti Naivopayantya Pachitim Kavayashlavesha Brahma Yushapi Kritam Ridha Muda Smaranta Yontar Bahishtanubritam Ashubam Vinunvan Acharya Chaitya Vapusha Swagatim Vyanakti Naivopyachitim Kavyayastavesha Brahma Yushapi Kritam Ridha Muda Smaranta Yontar Bahishtanubritam Ashubam Vidunvan Acharya Chaitya Vapusha Swagatim Vyanakti. Any ladies like to chant? Naivopayantya Pachitim Kavayastavesha Brahma Yushapi Kritam Ridha Muda Smaranta Yontar Bahishtanubritam Ashubam Vinunvan Acharya Chaitya Vipusha Swagatim Vyanakti Naeva, not at all. Upayanti, are able to express apachitim, their gratitude, kavayaha, learned devotees, tava, your, isha, O Lord, Brahma Ayusha, with a lifetime equal to Lord Brahma's. Api, in spite of. Kritam, magnanimous work. Ridha, increased. Mudha, joy. Smarantaha, remembering. Yaha, who. Anta, within. Bahi, outside. Tanubritam, of those who are embodied. Ashubham, misfortune. Vidunvan, dissipating. Acharya, of the spiritual master. Chaitya, of the supersoul. Vapusha, by the forms. Sva, own. Gatim, path. Vyanakti, shows. Translation. O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts in spiritual science could not fully express their indebtedness to you, even if they were endowed with the prolonged lifetime of Brahma. For you appear in two features, externally as the Acharya and internally as the Supersoul, to deliver the embodied living beings by directing him how to come to you. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 11:29-6 was spoken by Sri Uddhava after he heard from Sri Krishna all necessary instructions about yoga. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yenam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I'm very grateful to once again have the opportunity to try to say something. I'm absolutely an unqualified person. I'm begging for all of your blessings. I pray to be able to say something appropriate and relevant today. So this is the very first chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Srila Prabhupada explains that Krishnadas Kaviraj has written 14 introductory Sanskrit verses right at the beginning of this chapter. And this chapter is titled The Spiritual Masters. And in this section, we are hearing Krishnadas Kaviraj's own elaboration on, he will elaborate on all of those verses. He's written kind of like seed verses, and then he will further describe and explain them. And so now we're hearing a further explanation of the first verse. Maybe it's worth even looking at that. And maybe you could even say the first line of the first verse, which is glorification of the spiritual masters. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual masters, the devotees of the Lord's incarnations, His plenary portions, His energies, and the primeval Lord Himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. This is the very first verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan. So he is offering his obeisances first to Gurun, unto the spiritual masters. And so this verse, there have been several verses preceding this one where he has begun to glorify Guru, the principle of Guru. And here he's citing a verse, the purport says, spoken by Uddhava in the 11th canto, after Krishna has spoken the Uddhava Gita. O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts in spiritual science could not fully express their indebtedness to you, even if they were endowed with the prolonged lifetime of Brahma. So, there is no end to our indebtedness to Guru. I heard a story a disciple of Srila Prabhupada told. Once Srila Prabhupada was giving a class and he asked for questions, and one of the devotees stood up and in a very emotional way, his question was, Srila Prabhupada, how can we ever repay you? And his answer at that time was, always remain obliged. So here this verse is saying, even if we have the lifetime of Brahma, even if we are expert in spiritual science, even if we are a poet, we will not be able to express our gratitude, our indebtedness to Guru. Even in our programs that Srila Prabhupada has given, like we're singing the Guru Vastaka of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, glorifying Guru. What are the glories, what are the qualities of Guru? Every day. And in centers around the world, the devotees are getting darshan of Mangalartik of the deities, maybe Radha Krishna, Gaurnitai, Jagannath. But their first prayer is the prayer to Guru, to glorify Guru. And similarly, we have the Guru Puja every day. We can meditate very deeply on the profoundness of those prayers. It's always our challenge in Krishna consciousness, how to continually upgrade or improve our surrender to Guru. Now I'm attached to my own independent desires, but I may have some of faith in Guru. But progressively, I should make the attempt to give up my own independent agenda and give everything to Guru. That's our struggle. That's our main program. And service to Guru is eternal. It's not that, in some spiritual path it may be, okay, I got something, I learned something from the Guru, now he can be disregarded. Now there's no need for him anymore. That's maybe like an impersonal idea or a personal path. In our line, Guru is the most intimate servant of God, and so he represents God. And it's always our position to be the servant of Guru. So, Uddhava is saying to Krishna, you appear in two features, externally as the Acharya and internally as the Supersoul, to deliver the embodied living being by directing him how to come to you. And then the next verse, Krishnas Kaviraj cites a verse from Bhagavad-Gita. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. Translation: to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Purport: this verse of the Bhagavad-Gita 10:10 clearly states how Govindadev instructs his bona fide devotee. The Lord declares that by enlightenment in theistic knowledge, he awards attachment for him to those who constantly engage in his transcendental loving service. This awakening of divine consciousness enthralls a devotee who thus relishes his eternal transcendental mellow. Such an awakening is awarded only to those convinced by devotional service about the transcendental nature of the personality of Godhead. They know that the absolute truth, the all-spiritual and all-powerful person, is one without a second and has fully transcendental senses. He is the fountainhead of all emanations. Such pure devotees, always merged in knowledge of Krishna and absorbed in Krishna consciousness, exchange thoughts and realizations as great scientists exchange their views and discuss the results of their research in scientific academies. Such exchanges of thought in regard to Krishna give pleasure to the Lord, who therefore favors such devotees with all enlightenment. So, for those who are constantly serving the Lord, Prabhupada writes, then Krishna will bless you with attachment. We know the stages in Krishna consciousness from Shraddha to Prema. So the stage before Bhava Bhakti is Asakti, which means attachment. It's at that time when the mind will be one's friend, because one's natural desire, one's natural inclination will be to serve the Lord. And that may be the blessing, the hard-earned blessing of a long period of struggle in devotional service. By dedicating oneself to constantly serving the Lord, then such attachment can come. He's also glorifying the devotees. Such pure devotees, always merged in knowledge of Krishna and absorbed in Krishna consciousness, exchange thoughts and realizations as great scientists exchange their views. So Krishna consciousness is a science. It's ultimately meant to culminate in realization. And so based on our services, based on our hearing from the higher authority, and based on our own realizations, then devotees can come together and discuss. So today is the disappearance day of Vrindavan Das Thakur. And Krishnas Kaviraj has written extensively about Vrindavan Das Thakur as well, and glorified Vrindavan Das Thakur. In a way, you can say Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the sequel to Vrindavan Das Thakur's most important work, the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Vrindavan Das Thakur was born as the son of Narayani, who was a niece of Srivas Thakur. Srivas Thakur had several brothers. One of his brothers had a daughter, Narayani, and it seems like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was regularly going to the house of Srivas Thakur for kirtan, and it seems like she was a darling child of the house, and she took the Mahaprasadam of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a small girl. It's described like that in the Mahaprakash Leela, that Narayani took Mahaprasadam from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and she became famous as Narayani, who's gotten that blessing. At that time, I read somewhere, she was maybe less than 5 years old, like a 4-year-old girl. When she was pregnant with Vrindavan Das Thakur, she was widowed at that time. Vrindavan Das Thakur was born, it said, maybe 4 years after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left the world, he was about 20 years old. Later, after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left, Vrindavan Das Thakur took initiation from Nityananda Prabhu. And he's described by Krishnadas Kaviraj as the favorite disciple of Nityananda Prabhu, and also as an incarnation of Vyasadeva. Just like Vyasadeva compiled Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas, he compiled Mahabharata, which includes Bhagavad-Gita. And so he is the authorized writer about the pastimes of Krishna. So Vrindavan Das Thakur is considered the Vyasadeva for the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the 8th chapter of the Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj spends some time speaking about the glories of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He speaks about the importance of devotional service and the importance of accepting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Lord to attain success in Krishna consciousness. He gives the example of Jarasandha. Jarasandha was a great follower of the Vedic principles. Like, if you'll remember from the Krishna book, when Krishna, he came with Arjuna and Bhima to fight with Jarasandha, because Jarasandha needed to be defeated in order for Yudhisthira to do the Rajasuya Yajna. That was considered the obstacle to being able to do that. Krishna had already fought with Jarasandha so many times before and would destroy his armies but not ultimately defeat Jarasandha. He would continue letting him free so that he would continue to bring more armies. So anyway, so they went to Jarasandha, and they went in the guise of Brahmins, because Jarasandha was considered to be extremely charitable to Brahmins. He would never refuse them. So that's a very noble principle of Vedic culture, that a Kshatriya will behave like that. So Krishnadas Kaviraj says, but without accepting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then just like Jarasandha, he was a demon, even though following Vedic principles. So one will be a demon without accepting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Quite a heavy comment. So now he will say, he will give his advice. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the independent Supreme Personality of Godhead, is greatly magnanimous. Unless one worships him, one can never be liberated. O fools, just read Sri Chaitanya Mangal. By reading this book, you can understand all the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Vrindavan Das Thakur's biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was originally called Chaitanya Mangal. Later, Lochan Das Thakur also wrote a biography with the same name. And so the senior Vaishnavas at one point decided that Vrindavan Das Thakur's book will be renamed as Chaitanya Bhagavat. But in all the verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's always referred to as Chaitanya Mangal. So, O fools, just read Sri Chaitanya Mangal. This is the instruction from Krishnadas Kaviraj. By reading this book, you can understand all the glories of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. As Vyasadeva has compiled all the pastimes of Lord Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam, Thakur Vrindavan Das has depicted the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Thakur Vrindavan Das has composed Sri Chaitanya Mangal. Hearing this book annihilates all misfortune. Hearing this book annihilates all misfortune. By reading Sri Chaitanya Mangal, one can understand all the glories and truths of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda and come to the ultimate conclusion of devotional service to Lord Krishna. In Sri Chaitanya Mangal, later known as Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has given the conclusion and essence of devotional service by quoting the authoritative statements of Srimad Bhagavatam. If even a great atheist hears Sri Chaitanya Mangal, he immediately becomes a great devotee. The Bengali says, Chaitanya Mangal Sunayadi Pashandi Yavana Seha Maha Vaishnavahaya Tatakshana. So even if one is a Pashandi or a great atheist, even if one is a Yavana, a non-believer in the Vedic culture, by reading the Chaitanya Mangal, he will immediately become a great devotee. So that sounds nice, doesn't it? I was also born a Yavana. And so here's very powerful advice for me. The subject matter of this book is so sublime that it appears that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has personally spoken through the writings of Sri Vrindavan Das Thakur. I offer millions of obeisances unto the lotus feet of Vrindavan Das Thakur. No one else could write such a wonderful book for the deliverance of all fallen souls. Narayani eternally eats the remnants of the food of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur was born of her womb. This purport is very relevant. I'm sure they're all relevant, but you can look at this one. In text 43 of Gaur Ganadesh Deepika, a book written by Kavi Karnapur that describes all the associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and who they previously were, there is the following statement regarding Narayani. When Lord Krishna was a child, he was nursed by a woman named Ambika, who had a younger sister named Kalimbika. During the time of Lord Chaitanya's incarnation, the same Kalimbika used to eat the remnants of food left by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That Kalimbika was Narayani, who was a niece of Srivas Thakur's. Later on, when she grew up and married, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur was born from her womb. A devotee of Lord Sri Krishna is celebrated in terms of devotional service rendered to the Lord. Thus we know Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur as the son of Narayani. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur notes in this connection that there is no reference to his paternal ancestry because there is no need to understand it. That's very interesting. No need to understand his paternal ancestry, just the fact that his mother had taken the remnants from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that's all you need to know. I think we can also say that the Vaishnavas tend to be very humble and keep themselves in the background. And so it's not that Vrindavan Das Thakur wrote about himself to that extent, you know, who is my father, what is my lineage, like that. So going on, what a wonderful description he has given of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Anyone in the three worlds who hears it is purified. I fervently appeal to everyone to adopt the method of devotional service given by Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda and thus be freed from the miseries of material existence and ultimately achieve the loving service of the Lord. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has written Sri Chaitanya Mangal and therein described in all respects the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. He first summarized all the pastimes of the Lord and later described them vividly in detail. The pastimes of Lord Chaitanya are unlimited and unfathomable. Therefore, in describing all those pastimes, the book became voluminous. He saw them to be so extensive that he later felt that some had not been properly described. He ecstatically described the pastimes of Lord Nityananda, but the latter pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained untold, right? Because Krishnadas Kaviraj is also writing a huge biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Why do we need another one? Because the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are so voluminous that even in Vrindavan Das Thakur's large volume of Chaitanya Bhagavat, some pastimes were not there. Especially the specialty of the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat will be Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes as a grihasta before he took sannyas. The Adi Lila of Chaitanya Bhagavat are full of pastimes from before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took initiation from Ishvara Puri. Then the Madhya Lila are after he took initiation and he begins his Sankirtan pastimes. He starts doing Sankirtan at the house of Srivas Thakur and he begins to meet various associates. He comes to the company of Nityananda Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, like that. And then the final pastimes, maybe the Shesha Lila it's called in Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's only 10 chapters. He doesn't go so far into those pastimes. Whereas in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Adi Lila gives 5 chapters where the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from before he took sannyas are they're gone through at a somewhat quicker pace. And often Krishnadas Kaviraj will say that he will mention a pastime and he will say, this has been elaborately described by Vrindavan Das Thakur. So in that way, the two books are kind of complementary. The devotees of Vrindavan were all very anxious to hear those pastimes, meaning those that remained untold. In Vrindavan, in a great place of pilgrimage, underneath the desire trees, is a golden throne bedecked with jewels. On that throne sits the son of Nanda Maharaj, Sri Govindadev, the transcendental Cupid. Varieties of majestic service are rendered to Govinda there. His garments, ornaments, and paraphernalia are all transcendental. In that temple of Govindaji, thousands of servitors always render service to the Lord in devotion. Even with thousands of mouths, one could not describe this service. In that temple, the chief servitor was Sri Haridas Pandit. His qualities and fame are known all over the world. He was gentle, tolerant, peaceful, magnanimous, grave, sweet in his words, and very sober in his endeavors. He was respectful to everyone and worked for the benefit of all. Diplomacy, envy, and jealousy were unknown to his heart. The 50 qualities of Lord Krishna were all present in his body. Anyway, so there's some description. The point I wanted to also make, maybe I'll just say it in summary. Krishnadas Kaviraj will go to the leading Vaishnavas of his time to get their blessings to write about the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because to take on such a responsible task is not an ordinary thing. To write transcendental subject, one has to be blessed from above. And so, the point that's there again and again is that all of these great Vaishnavas from whom Krishnadas Kaviraj got his blessings, they themselves were absorbed in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How were they absorbed in those pastimes? Well, Chaitanya Charitamrita hadn't been written yet. So they were absorbed in the pastimes described by Vrindavan Das Thakur. That's what I wanted to say. From Chaitanya Bhagavat, this is Vrindavan Das Thakur's book. We can just read about Narayani at the Mahaprakash. The remnants of the Lord's foodstuffs went to the pious and fortunate Narayani. The Lord personally gave this innocent little niece of Srivas Pandit, his brother's daughter, his own remnants. She ate the Lord's remnants with great joy and relish. The Vaishnavas blessed her, saying that she was most fortunate since she could directly serve the Supreme Lord Narayan at such a young age. After Narayani had eaten, Lord Chaitanya said, "Narayani, let me hear you cry for Krishna in great ecstasy." Such is the influence of Lord Chaitanya's words that she immediately called out, "Krishna, Krishna," and began to weep. Thus, for all time, this pastime became famous among the Vaishnavas, and the little girl became known as Narayani, who ate Lord Chaitanya's remnants. Anyway, maybe we'll leave it here. If anyone has any comments or questions.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Guruji. So I have a question which is kind of a difficult question. It's a question for Srila Prabhupada, and don't mind such a question. It's an interesting question. So why did Srila Prabhupada translate and preach from and travel the world with Chaitanya Charitamrita and place such emphasis on Chaitanya Charitamrita, as that is the postgraduate work, that is the primary work, that is the sum of all, that is the be-all and end-all of Gaura Tattva as Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he didn't travel the world with Chaitanya Bhagavat and preach so much from Chaitanya Bhagavat and give Chaitanya Bhagavat to his disciples. There's so much emphasis on Chaitanya Charitamrita in his preaching and Chaitanya Bhagavat. So what's the difference there and what's the reason there? What's the significance, between the two? And why did Srila Prabhupada make that decision to preach from Chaitanya Charitamrita and give Chaitanya Charitamrita as the prime shastra for all of us in ISKCON, rather than Chaitanya Bhagavat? What's going on there?
Thank you so much for that question. I was also thinking about that. I'd asked a senior person about that, and I liked their answer very much. I will share it for what it's worth. Of the two books, Chaitanya Charitamrita has a lot more philosophical depth. It's maybe a more difficult work. And so, how valuable it is that our Acharya has commented on it and presented it extensively. The Chaitanya Bhagavat, if it's translated by somebody else, there may be much less room for misunderstanding. Our Gaudiya library is huge. Srila Prabhupada, he had so many years to translate the things that he translated. Even Srimad Bhagavatam, he couldn't complete the 12 cantos. If he had remained for longer, could he present other things? Anyway, I've shown from Chaitanya Charitamrita, you can't overstate, Srila Prabhupada in his own book, as I've just said, right? The instruction is clear. Oh fools, just read Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat.
No, one is better than the other. I mean, the question is what's in Chaitanya Charitamrita that's so significant that's maybe not in Chaitanya Bhagavat? It's not that one is better than the other or something like that, but what are the contrasting differences? What makes one unique and what makes the other unique? That's more the intention of the question.
Yeah, okay. Well, Chaitanya Charitamrita is much deeper in its in the way that it describes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taking the mood of Radharani. Chaitanya Bhagavat doesn't doesn't really go there, actually. Chaitanya, and again, like I tried to say, Chaitanya Bhagavat is more focused on the Grihastha Leelas of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Charitamrita is more focused on the Sannyas Leelas of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So those are, I mean, in a very simple way, those are some of the differences. We had heard Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had instructed his disciples that all should read Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat 100 times. And as a start, like 16 rounds is the minimum. So anyway, Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu was thinking about that, and I read the Chaitanya Bhagavat to him maybe 3.5 times, which was a lot. But anyway, long way to 100.
As you said, the preaching mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very prominent in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'm sure it's also in the Chaitanya Bhagavat or Chaitanya Mangala. But Srila Prabhupada commented that one author or writer said that you would be a good person to translate this Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he took that as inspiration that let us bring Chaitanya Charitamrita. And also Prabhupada took solace in Chaitanya Charitamrita on his voyage over on Jaladuta. Whenever there's any disturbing moment, Chaitanya Charitamrita gives great happiness. So like we said, there's so many transcendental literatures, not that one is better, this or that. Prabhupada gave us a treasure house of literature with full instructions, and just follow Guru Parampara and follow that the mood that Prabhupada gave it, how he gave it to Guru. So much literature, so we're not minimizing anything now.
Thank you.
But you might have 20, 30 big cakes, and Prabhupada to eat from this cake and have the flavor of all of them. So we eat from this cake, if we start eating all the cakes everywhere, you get bewildered, you know.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Too much cake eating is not good.
Prabhu has a question or a comment? Oh.
Going back to the beginning, how important it was, we said in offering respects to the spiritual masters, the acharyas. I mentioned in a class a few weeks ago how Prabhupada chastised Pradyumna because Guru Puja was going on. And Pradyumna wasn't there. So we went and had a servant at Pradyumna and said, "Where are you?" Pradyumna was worshipping the Shila that Prabhupada had given him just days before. So he was in his room doing his puja. And Prabhupada said, first Guru Puja, then you do your puja. So it's very important we understand what's important. And that's why every day we keep saying the same thing. This morning program this is what our spiritual master has given us. This is our most important thing. As far as Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat, it was Prabhupada's choice. I think you'll find many places where there's no why. This was his decision for whatever reason. And of course he credits Pradyumna and his wife, Arati, for actually doing the vast majority of the work in that. When it was Puja Day, he glorified the two of them. He said, actually, Pradyumna is not Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Wow.
So this is how how he sees things.
Wow. Hey, Prabhu, Chandrasekhar Prabhu.
Thank you for your nice, eloquent class. Just echoing what you said regarding Chaitanya Charitamrita versus in relation to Chaitanya Bhagavat. My understanding of the Prabhupada was concerned, as we see in his letters, that the Siddhanta be established before he would pass away. His first generation followers, sincere as they were, and they would agree, did not know the Siddhanta that we take for granted 50 years later. And as you so nicely said, the Chaitanya Charitamrita has a lot more of a Siddhantic emphasis. And so if maybe sort of philosophically speculate about what made that choice.
Yeah, thank you for saying that more clearly than I did. That was nice. No, really. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for your kind attention. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Can I ask a question? Okay, Prabhu. Because your lecture said the same thing about our practices gradual surrendering.
Yeah.
So my question is how to work on it practically. Maybe with pen and paper, or how you work, or advice to work on this.
Well, like in Nectar of Instruction, you can follow especially second and third verse. It describes what is favorable, what is unfavorable.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare